I'm going to talk a little bit about scribes, but maybe in a different way than you've been thinking about it. First of all, what's the penetration of scribes into the practices of the room? Who has scribes? Okay, I think it's almost at the tipping point. We're just now getting some information through the literature about where's the best place to deploy them. I mean, so if everybody says yes, scribes, well, what can we expect from those scribes? And are there better places to put them and less good places to put them? And how will we measure? So it's yes, no, maybe, and it's also when and where. So we'll talk about some factors to consider, how you can measure the efficacy of your scribes, why you wouldn't choose to put them, what they can't do for you, which I think should be obvious, but we'll just march through what they can do for you, and there are some things that maybe you haven't even considered. So, first of all, what are you trying to do? And it looks like there's about 5 different ways that we can look at the implementation of scribes and whether or not they help a practice. First is the productivity, and you can measure it at patients per hours and in RVUs. Then it's just revenue, okay, which you can measure at just global revenue or how much you're getting per patient. Then documentation, does it give time back to the clinician? Does it improve quality of documentation at all? Then we always think this should help. Shouldn't it fix throughput? Shouldn't scribes help? If I got somebody doing my paperwork, shouldn't I be able to see patients quicker and improve throughput? Or to see, is that really bearing out based on the studies? And then what does it do to satisfaction, both patient satisfaction and provider satisfaction? So does anybody doubt that meaningful use and the rush to the EMR has taken a toll on particular practices, particularly ours, in terms of productivity? Does anybody doubt that? Would anyone argue that point? It's so funny because it's also important to note that they're not all created equal, are they? Have you all had an EMR that you thought was pretty good, and then you've had to switch to one that was not so? So here, from my personal experience, 2 versions of EMR in my world. I'm licensed in Texas. I work in a freestanding in Texas. I was getting on my plane to go work my weekend shifts, and I got a call, and they said, "Oh, did anybody tell you we have a new EMR? I'm going to work the night shift in my freestanding by myself with a new EMR." They said, "Don't worry about it. Watch the training video on the plane." What do you think? Anybody heard of a small product that may not stand the test of time called ePowerDoc? Anybody heard of that product? It was developed by some ER docs in Ohio. I believe it is probably the best of breed. I did an hour and 15-minute video on the plane, went to work in my freestanding, and used it. No muss, no fuss. Well, little muss, little fuss, but you know what I mean. Not so bad. It has a built-in sort of intelligence, so the third time that it would see orders, it could be diagnostic orders, therapeutic orders, discharge paperwork, the third time it sees it, it says, "Doctor, would you like to save this order set? Doctor, what would you like to call it?" Anybody got a system that's working for them like that? This was the most amazing thing. So can you see how it's iterative? The more you used it, the better you got, because pretty soon it had all of your practice habits embedded in the system. Okay, fast forward. This month, Intermountain Healthcare is going live with a Cerner product. A Cerner product. Can I hear the moan? Cerner, right? Okay. I just went to a 4-hour training session. 4 hours. Valuable time, 4 hours. And I can proudly tell you, I can log on and order a sodium. My daughter, who's in medical school, says, "Well, you'll never have anybody that's hyponatremic, Mom." That's all I can do. 4 hours of training, that's all I can do. So to be sure, the EMR has taken its toll on specialties, in particular ours. Why? Because we have so many transactions in such rapid time in an ER. It's not like the floor. It's not at all comparable to other practice. Here's an example of what I have seen in my work as a consultant. This is Kootenai Medical Center. I visited them in 2009. They saw 48,000 visits in 23 beds. Off the cuff, is that pretty good? More than 2,000 visits per bed a year. That's amazing. This was a very efficient ER, one of the most efficient I'd been in. You can see their sort of breakdown. These were their metrics, and mind you, this is 2009, and you do know that we've been teasing back our performance metrics over time. Every year they get a little bit shorter, door to dock and length of stay and so forth. These were amazing in 2009. This was just a kick in it ER, right? Left out being seen 2%, then this was great. 4 patients per hour per doctor. What do you think of that? Anybody coming close to that now? This was, I just thought to myself, I cannot believe what they were doing in a tiny little space. Somebody's gonna make fun of my explosion slides. This is a great slide. There's 101 uses for this slide. I will email you this slide if you would like it. Great slide. So this is what happened after they went with a product called Meditech 6.0. Groan, boo, sure, yeah, we've heard that. This is what happened to their productivity immediately. Could you imagine? So here you run your ER, 4 patients an hour down to 1.7. Can you feel that pain? All right? So their patients per hour went down. Their RVUs went down so much that doctors said they would not stay. They had to immediately renegotiate their contract, and it was just a huge mess. And you know how they solved it? This was sort of pre the real surge of Scribes. They gave each doctor a health unit clerk, a HUC, to go to work with, to help them manage the EMR so they could see patients. Hugely expensive, right? So what do we know about the impact of Scribes on productivity? And mind you, you understand, it started with us, the whole Scribe journey. It is now spread to every other specialty. You can find it in cardiology literature, urology literature, of course, family practice. So here's was a study. Mind, this isn't an exhaustive review, but it's the studies that I thought were the most telling for us and what we care about. It was actually looking at a cardiology practice. Okay, 10 guys used Scribes, 15 did not, and they found that their productivity per hour was greater with the guys that used Scribes. They generated more RVUs. This is from Academic Emergency Medicine, 2010. Improved patients per hour, improved RVUs. Looking at this one, 6% and 15% are the improvement per hour. Hold on, I want to make sure I didn't skip something here. So what we're going to do is we're literally going to march through with the literature and show you, does it improve patients per hour and RVUs? Does it improve revenue? Does it improve documentation at all? Does it improve throughput? And then what about patient satisfaction? I just want to make sure you kind of could stay with me and follow me here because we're going kind of fast. All right, here's from Emergency Medicine Australasia in March. They saw a big improvement. The lower tech guys saw the most improvement. No surprise there, right? The guys that were struggling with an EMR, of course, give them a Scribe. They saw the biggest improvement. Here's another study, Western Journal of Emergency Medicine. RVUs per hour and per patient were improved. So I think we've kind of settled that question, right? Are you getting the feel for this? If your goal with the Scribes is to improve some patients per hour and improve on the RVUs, you're going to see it. What about revenue? Can we make a case? Is it definitely going to, you'd think it would, right? By saying that, oh, well, sure, you're going to see an increase in revenue. First of all, you need to know it's quite expensive to introduce a new person to the Scribe world. The training of them is very expensive. The big companies have all merged now. You have Scribe America and just a couple of others, and it's gotten a little bit more expensive than it was in the early days. Anybody got a homegrown Scribe program? Yeah, good. See, they're hard to start now. So if you've got one that's working for you, that's fabulous. Because I just wanted to show you it's kind of expensive to get it going. All right, so here's another Emergency Medicine Australasia. Billings per patient improved, overall income improved. Here's another one. They saw a slight improvement in patient per hour, but they didn't see the billings go up. So the literature looked to me like if you're just sheer want to guarantee improved revenue, it's a little squishier. Improving patients per hour, sure, improving RVUs, but maybe not improving the bottom line as much as you'd hoped. This was in emergency medicine reports. A group tried to quantify what it meant in terms of dollars and increased productivity having Scribes. So it's like I say, gonna see improved patients per hour, gonna see improved RVUs, kind of squishy on the revenue, right? What about documentation? One study showing reducing the time in documentation 50%. Anybody care about that? I'll take it, right? Give me more time with my patients face to face. Here's one that reduced at 36%. Okay, so are you kind of seeing, yes, we can say you'll decrease the time that the physician sits at the bedside or at the computer, basically. There's one study that looking at, gee, are the notes any better? And they had a checklist of what they wanted to see in these notes. It was family practice clinic, slightly higher in quality, they thought. Okay, so probably going to do a little bit better on the documentation piece. Going to put me back at the bedside with the patients and maybe improve the quality a little bit. Now, how about throughput? Where do you think this is going to be? Well, shouldn't all this other stuff lead up to better throughputs, right? Shouldn't we be moving those patients quicker? Well, actually, one study that did not show improved throughput, another one. And actually, what I found is it was very hard to make a definitive case that my flow is going to be better with Scribes. Anybody had a different experience? Because this is new, and as I say, limited. Would any of you say that you thought it did make a big difference? Hands, because we'd love to see that. Where it really made a difference in throughput, having Scribes. Couple people, okay, all right, fair enough. Like I say, I don't pretend to own this topic by any means. I'm just showing where we're starting to build out some information about what they do and they don't do. Here was one where their volume went up, they kept the length of stay the same, so it didn't get better, but it didn't get worse, so that was a little bit hopeful. And here was one study, I found one study that showed all of their throughput metrics got better. All right, what about satisfaction? You know this, the patients really like it when you're back face-to-face with them, right? They just really like it. They don't like it when their nurses are on the computer. They don't like it when their doctors are on the computer. So this is a definite positive. And here was another study that showed physician satisfaction went up. So I would say this bold statement. If your goal is to just recruit doctors, Scribes are probably a good idea because the new grads like going out to that kind of a setting. And if your goal is to keep older doctors practicing, especially when there's a new EMR, like I'm telling you what, they give me a Scribe with this Cerner thing, I'm down with it. Sign me up for 10 more years, I'm good, right? And that's how a lot of them view. Rick Bucata will talk about how he had a number of people in his practice in San Bernardino San Gabriel, that were getting ready to retire. They introduced Scribes and the guys stayed on and continued to practice. So for longevity. All right, but what about why would you turn away from these? It's really important to understand operationally where you get no bang for the buck with a Scribe. And we're seeing this as ERs get busier and busier. How many of you are more than 40,000 visits? Yeah, it gets hard. It gets hard. And all of a sudden, some things that you hadn't even thought about before are slowing you up. So if your ancillary services are slow, and Pam's going to talk next about some tricks to improve ancillary services, that's going to slow you up. That's going to create bottlenecks. I'm now seeing in the busier ERs, housekeeping being a problem. The rooms are not getting cleaned quick enough to keep up with the turnover. I'm seeing transport. I would suggest you this. Transport is so far behind operationally that they're probably the worst service in the hospital because there's no sort of strategic deployment. You understand this. It's just kind of willy-nilly who transports what patient where. So are you in big enough hospitals that it could take 20 minutes to go drop a patient off? No one's doing it in a strategic way where they're having the transporters go in one sort of even area. No, they're all over the place. And so it's very inefficient. How many of you feel like you can feel housekeeping is a drag on your department, getting your rooms cleaned? And especially now, are you still having your nurses clean? So here's the thing. Increasingly with the hospital-acquired infections business, there's pressure on hospitals to not have nurses do the cleaning. And also, when should you do a terminal clean? How many times should you deep clean a room? You understand, when a patient leaves upstairs, there's a terminal clean. The room is very deeply cleaned. In the ER, we just put a new sheet on, right? Maybe wipe off the naugahyde, right? And we call it good, That's probably not going to be enough in the future. And housekeeping is going to be bigger and bigger. The slowest housekeeping turnover in hospitals that I see that have dedicated ED housekeepers. They can't keep up with it. How many of you have felt transport? You got 4 patients to go up, you need those beds, and you can't get them transported upstairs. Anybody struggling with transport issues? It's funny, because these things, we didn't talk about this 10 years ago, and now it's here, and we're all looking for the solutions. And then if you have very cumbersome admission processes, do I dare ask, how many of you are boarding pretty regularly? Yeah. I figured. Okay. So as you would imagine, your scribes, they do not put any kind of Band-Aid on any of these things. I'm showing you this is a hospital in Philadelphia, 162 minutes to get a plain film. You know where we are now? It's been teased back. In many parts of the country, it's under 40 minutes. Order to results for X-ray. And oh, by the way, we're finally getting some comparative data. Have you noticed it's been hard to get? So the advisory board has put something together, small numbers, but still there, by hospital size. AAEM has some as well, and I put together some comps. If you would be interested in something like that, email me, and I'll share with you what I put together. Then what if you have to work through this algorithm to admit a medicine patient? Okay, so now you've got things, these are way out of your control and way away from what a scribe can do for you. Other reasons why you wouldn't perhaps do it. Productivity is already optimized. What do you think of that? If you're already a very efficient ER, then the scribe is not going to add anything in terms of that efficiency. The most strategic thing I've seen is I saw a group dedicate their scribes to the busier sites with lower acuity, i.e. rapid turnover. Certain days of the week, nobody on night shift got a scribe because they felt like you could keep up with the workload. So is anybody doing anything that strategic with the deployment of your scribes? Of those of you who have them, are you really looking at your data to see where you want to put them? And does it make sense that if the acuity is higher and the admission rate is higher, maybe you don't want to put the scribe there? If it's 7 hours to get an admitted patient upstairs, does somebody have time to do a chart? What do you think? As opposed to, there's other places where I really think you should, shame on you for not putting them there. All right. So you might use them on sudden shifts where there's documentation taking place that needs to happen fast, where there's lots of turnover, and I'll show you some things. So first of all, everybody's got their weekly pattern, right? So there are ERs that will just have scribes on the busy days of the week or the busy hours of the day. Oh, by the way, so this is an arrival curve. I really believe it's almost like a fingerprint. Although they have the same crescendo, decrescendo, right? You've known this is how the sort of cycle of an ED. They are very different in subtle ways. I've got one that's a geriatric ER that it surges earlier and it falls off earlier because all the seniors go to bed early. So everything winds down a little bit quicker. I've got one that has a huge number of pediatric patients. There's the 10 a.m. surge. Mom's been tired of taking care of the sick kid all night. And then there's the 5 p.m. surge. Dad or mom come home from work and say, you're sick, let's go to the ER. So they're very interesting, and you should know this. You should know this like the back of your hand. What is your arrival curve? All right, ED management, Banner Payson, they've done a lot of things with split flow. They brought in scribes for peak hours only. Now they did it with a change package of other changes, but they saw some improvement in throughput. Should your ESI breakdown play into this? Are many of you tracking door to doc, length of stay, left without being seen? Are you tracking things by ESI? Do you know how you take care of your ESI 4s and 5s versus your 1s and 2s? I think we're all in the era of data now where we can do this. How about, are you breaking it down by geographic zone? Do you have, if you have, say, a team 1 or a pod A, are you tracking these kind of metrics by pod? That will help you inform you as to where you might want to put your scribes. So I think this was the money shot article that I want you to be aware of that just came out this year. So they looked at, it was an academic ER, but they found, get this, RVUs were improved for ESI 1 and 2 patients, but that didn't improve 4s and 5s. What I'm starting to think is, okay, an ankle sprain's an ankle sprain. No matter who documents and how, there's only but so much that you can generate in terms of RVUs. Whereas the more complicated, sicker patients, maybe if someone could have time to do some extra documentation, we could recapture some revenue. So what do you think about this? I believe all of you should have a flow model for your ER. And oh, by the way, most of you can no longer bed every ambulance patient. Have you understood that? To be sure, I've got some ERs in here that 40% of their patients come by ambulance. Hello. So they can't. So you're going to start with all your arrivals, and how will you stream them? And there's variations on this. There's also variation on physician and triage. You can do quick look physician and triage. VCU does physician and triage, and their record is 112 patients seen by the doc in triage in a day. 112. Oh my God. Why? They did a blink response, order some things, pass off to the back, okay? Then I have other ERs that the whole front half of an ER visit is done by a physician. Well, for crying out loud, then if you're going to document and do the front half, you need a scribe and triage, right? That's probably the place you do not want to bottleneck is if you're doing physician and triage, provider and triage. How many of you are doing that now? Can I see? Some? Okay, I honestly, I think this is the wave of the future, my friends, in terms of operations. And then you can have you could have all the 4s and 5s go through your physician and triage as well. I have one ER that I recommended that because the PAs that were in the back were skittish and they were turning people away, and their fast track was only seeing 4% of their volume. Anybody think 4% is too low for a fast track? Oh yes. Close it or fix it, right? So in any case, you should have a flow model that's based on your data that tells how you want to stream patients. And in terms of scribes then, where would you put your scribes? Probably physician and triage, right? If you were really worried about revenue capture, I'd say let's go in the major care where the sicker patients are so you get more RVUs. If you're really caring about quick turnover, maybe you put them in your fast track, yeah? So you can see how it maybe just saying, oh, we got scribes and you're done is not the way to do it. Maybe we could be a little more strategic. Oh, by the way, scribes are being used for other things, to monitor quality initiatives. I don't know if I like this because I already feel like the hand-washing police are everywhere, but some people are using the scribes to monitor things like that. So how would you decide? I think you would start with understanding your department, how the patients flow, where your bottlenecks are, and so forth. And then you might be more strategic about it. Knowing the lengths of all of these time intervals in an ER stay would help you too to decide. Oh wait, hold on. So let's take it up to another notch. And you're going to hear about this ER because it's one of the most high-performing ERs in the country. This is Texas Harris Health. It's in Fort Worth. Anybody know this hospital? It is a lean machine. They are very efficient. You'll hear more about them after lunch. But guess what they've just done? They are using 2 scribes per doctor in the fast turnover places and the doctors that have shown that they are very efficient and moving patients really quickly, because what they did was they monitored and found the rate limiting step was the doctor's ability to get this paperwork done. How about that? Anybody here think they would benefit from 2 scribes? I actually wanted it in another hospital where I saw they were going room to room doing doc and triage, and I thought, man, he could go faster if he had another scribe to just go to. Well, this one's entering everything. This one could be, on the next visit. So, because it's all been data, let's have a little fun. How many of you believe that you are into medical TV trivia? So this was a radio show that then became a daytime soap opera. What was the show? General Hospital, you got it. Longest running soap opera, by the way, okay. So here's General Hospital, and they're very close at General Hospital. They're really close. That's a hospital administrator and a doctor. Real close at General Hospital. Very close. HR is having a heart attack over this closeness. They're so close that the storyline led to the most watched hour of daytime television in the history of US TV. What was it? Luke and Laura. Luke and Laura. Okay, but here's the funny thing that everyone forgets. Luke met Laura because he kidnapped her and assaulted her. But by the time they got married, her dress was so pretty we didn't care, right? All right? Every magazine had the dress. Everyone talked about the dress. Anyway, that's the most 1 hour watched on TV. All right, any questions or comments about what you just heard? What I'm trying to get you to say is, I believe now we have a little more data. We can start to think about scribes in a more strategic way. And maybe you'll want to get sort of creative. Maybe you'll just want to try it on certain shifts, certain days, certain zones, something like that. What do you think? Might be worth trying, yeah? So, okay.